The battlefield stretched across the jagged plains of Zarthis V, its once vivid blue sky choked with the gray haze of war. Scorched earth and shattered terrain bore the scars of endless bombardments, while the air crackled with residual energy from plasma blasts. For the Coalition, this was just another front in a war they were losing. Commander Ilver, a tall, serpentine Vitraxi, stood at the edge of a ruined command post, his amber eyes scanning the chaos. His species, known for their wisdom, had always been the cornerstone of the Coalition strategies. Yet, even his centuries of tactical experience faltered against the Zorkay Dominion. The enemy moved with cold precision, their biomechanical war machines an unrelenting tide that consumed everything in their path. No matter how many defenses were erected or how desperately the Coalition fought, the Zoré dismantled them with brutal efficiency. Ilver's comlink crackled. Sector 7 has fallen. The Krellin reinforcements were obliterated, reported a weary voice. It belonged to General Kale, a hulking, bear-like Brockharry whose species prided itself on strength and resilience. But even Kale's voice trembled now, stripped of its usual bravado. Ilver closed his eyes, letting the weight of yet another failure settle over him. "We cannot keep losing ground like this," Ilver said, his voice a low hiss. "Another fallback, and Zarthis V will be theirs. And with it, the last gateway to our inner worlds. We're out of options," Kale rumbled. "We've thrown everything we have at them. It's not enough." In the distance, a Zorkay Dreadwalker, a towering monstrosity of metal and flesh, stomped through the Coalition's lines, its mechanical claws tearing apart infantry and vehicles alike. Alien soldiers scattered in its wake, their desperation evident even from a distance. Ilver turned away. He had seen enough. Hours later, in the dim confines of a mobile command center, the Coalition's leaders gathered. Representatives from dozens of species sat around the glowing hollow table, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. The room buzzed with muted conversations, a cacophony of despair. Ilver waited for silence before speaking. "We face annihilation," he began, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "The Zorake do not relent. They do not negotiate. They only conquer. And we," he gestured to the room, "are not enough to stop them." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Kale broke it. "There is one option we haven't explored." Murmurs rippled through the room. Ilver's eyes narrowed. "Speak plainly." "Humans," Kale said. A sharp intake of breath from one of the delegates, a crystalline being from the Lysar Collective, reflected the unease in the room. "They are savages," the Lysaran hissed, barely unified among themselves. "They are no better than the Zoré." Kale shrugged his massive shoulders. "Savages or not, they fight. And they win." Ilver's tail flicked with agitation. The humans were newcomers to the interstellar stage, having only recently been discovered. Their technology was primitive by Coalition standards, their politics fractured. But reports of their military ventures, small skirmishes against pirate clans, territorial disputes with rogue states, had hinted at a ferocity unmatched by any species in the Coalition. "They demand autonomy in all military operations," Kale continued. "They won't follow our command." "Unacceptable," barked an ethery diplomat, his translucent wings fluttering in agitation. "We cannot allow outsiders to dictate our war." "Then we will lose," Kale replied bluntly. His words hung in the air like a death knell. Ilver weighed the decision, the burden of leadership pressing heavily on him. The humans were an unknown variable, their methods untested on a scale this vast. Yet the alternative was clear: extinction. He made his decision. "Send the message," he said. "Invite them." 2 weeks later, the human fleet arrived. The Coalition had gathered on Zarthis V's orbital station to receive them. Ilver stood at the viewport, watching as the human ships emerged from warp. Their vessels were angular and functional, lacking the aesthetic grace of Coalition designs. Where Vitraxi ships shimmered with reflective plating and Brockharry warships bore ornate carvings, the human fleet was a stark contrast, dark, brutal, and efficient. The humans docked without ceremony. Ilver and the other leaders waited in the hangar as the first figures disembarked. The air was heavy with anticipation and unease. The human soldiers were unlike anything the Coalition had expected. Encased in matte black armor, they moved with a precision that bordered on machine-like. Their faces were obscured by visors, their weapons compact but bristling with menace. At their head was a tall, broad-shouldered figure who removed his helmet, revealing a hard, weathered face. "I am Colonel Ethan Hale," he said, his voice cold and direct. "We're here to fight your war, but we do it our way." Hale stepped forward, towering over Hale. "Your way? This is our galaxy, human." Hale met the Bracari's gaze without flinching. "And yet, you're the ones losing it." The bluntness of his words sparked a wave of anger among the Coalition delegates. Ilver raised a hand to quiet them. "Colonel Hale, we've heard much about humanity's capabilities, but we need results, not arrogance." "You'll get results," Hale said. "But understand this, we don't play by your rules. War is not about honor or tradition. It's about survival. And survival requires ruthlessness." Ilver studied the human commander. There was a cold logic in his words, a pragmatism that the Coalition had long avoided. In the back of his mind, doubt whispered, warning him of the cost of inviting these strangers into their fight. But louder than doubt was the memory of the Dread Walker, of worlds burning, of the Zorake's unstoppable advance. "Very well," Ilver said at last. "Show us what you can do." As the humans prepared to deploy, Ilver felt the first glimmer of something unfamiliar, a cautious, fragile hope. Yet beneath it lay the shadow of uncertainty, the fear that this alliance would save them from one enemy only to create another. Still, the war demanded sacrifices, and the time for hesitation had passed. The battlefield awaited. The Coalition's forward base on Zarthus V was a fractured mosaic of alien ingenuity. Hovering Lysaran barricades shimmered with refractive fields, Bracari artillery emplacements growled with readiness, and delicate Vitraxi drones hummed like metallic bees. Yet amidst the eclectic assembly of technology and culture, the humans stood out starkly. Their equipment was neither elegant nor exotic. It was practical, efficient, and intimidating. The alien soldiers watched them with a mix of suspicion and uneasy fascination as they prepared for their first engagement. Colonel Ethan Hale moved through the human encampment, his expression as unyielding as the armor plating of their vehicles. Every soldier who crossed his path snapped to attention, their discipline sharp enough to slice through the tension that lingered in the air. Hale stopped beside a human heavy gunner inspecting his weapon, a sleek, brutish device that gleamed with lethal promise. "Everything in place, Sergeant?" Hale asked, his tone clipped. "Yes, sir," the gunner replied. "Heavy unit locked and loaded. Forward scouts report Zorake activity along the western ridge." Hale gave a curt nod. "Good. Stick to the plan. And remember, precision over power. We don't waste time. We don't waste lives." Nearby, Commander Ilver observed the exchange, his amber eyes narrowing. The Vitraxi leader had seen countless commanders prepare their forces for battle. But there was something different about the humans. Their movements were deliberate, their expressions devoid of fear or hesitation. It wasn't bravery, Ilver realized. It was something colder, focused, calculated. He approached Hale, his serpentine form gliding silently over the ground. "Colonel Hale," Ilver began, his voice low but sharp. "You seem confident for someone about to face the Zorake for the first time." Hale turned to meet Ilver's gaze, his expression unreadable. "Confidence isn't a luxury I indulge in, Commander. I trust my training, my people, and the numbers. That's all." Ilver's tail flicked in irritation. "This war is not as simple as numbers." "It is for us," Hale replied. "The Zorake are bullies. They rely on overwhelming force and fear to win. We've dealt with their kind before. Not on this scale." Hale's jaw tightened. Scale doesn't change strategy. It just makes the stakes higher. Before Ilver could respond, an alarm blared through the camp, its piercing tone sending soldiers scrambling to their positions. The Zorake had arrived. The battlefield roared to life as the Zorake forces surged from the horizon. Their war machines towered like living mountains, their metallic carapaces shimmering with adaptive camouflage that rippled as they moved. The Coalition's artillery opened fire, plasma shells streaking across the sky, but the Zorike absorbed the barrage with chilling indifference. They advanced with a methodical inevitability, their infantry swarming forward like a tide of nightmares. Hale's voice cut through the chaos. "Alpha teams, on me! Bravo! Hold the line and suppress fire on their flanks. Charlie, ready for infiltration maneuvers. Move, move, move!" The human soldiers sprang into action with clockwork precision. Ilver watched as they surged toward the western ridge, their smaller force moving faster and more cohesively than any coalition unit he had seen. The humans didn't scatter or panic. They flowed like water, adapting instantly to the shifting chaos of the battlefield. As Hale's team approached the ridge, the Zorike turned their attention toward them. A dread walker shifted its bulk, its massive claws carving into the earth as it aimed its plasma cannons at the human squad. Ilver braced himself for their annihilation, but Hale had anticipated the move. He barked an order into his comm link, and a trio of human snipers hidden in the debris fired in unison. Their high-velocity rounds punched through the Dreadwalker's sensory arrays, leaving it momentarily blind. "Now!" Hale shouted, and the heavy gunner unleashed a devastating burst from his weapon, the explosive rounds detonating against the Dreadwalker's vulnerable joints. The towering machine faltered, its balance disrupted. Moments later, a well-placed grenade from a human demolitionist sent it crashing to the ground in a fiery explosion. The Coalition forces watching from the sidelines were stunned. The Zorike were not invincible after all, but the humans weren't finished. While the Zorike scrambled to reinforce their crumbling western line, Hale's Charlie team infiltrated their rear positions. Ilver watched the holographic tactical map in disbelief as the human soldiers dismantled the Zorike artillery emplacements with brutal efficiency. Where Coalition forces would have hesitated, taking time to assess and strategize, the humans acted without hesitation. They moved with the singular goal of destruction, every action deliberate and lethal. By the time the battle ended, the western ridge was littered with the wreckage of Zorike war machines and the broken remains of their soldiers. The humans regrouped at the Coalition base, their black armor scorched but their morale unshaken. Hale's face was as impassive as ever, but there was a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. "That's how you win," he said as he removed his helmet, addressing no one in particular. Cale approached, his massive frame dwarfing Hale's, but there was no mockery in his tone this time. "You fought well," the Brockary rumbled. "Better than I expected." Hale met his gaze evenly. "You'll see more of it. This was just the beginning." Ilver, however, remained silent. He couldn't shake the unease that had settled over him. The humans had won the battle, but the way they fought, ruthless, unyielding, and utterly focused, was unlike anything the Coalition had ever embraced. Their methods were effective, yes, but they came at a cost. For every Zorike destroyed, there was a piece of something vital that seemed to slip away from those who watched. As the camp settled into an uneasy calm, Ilver approached Hale again. "You've proven your strength, Colonel. But strength alone doesn't win wars. It must be tempered with wisdom." Hale's expression darkened, his voice colder than before. "Wisdom doesn't matter if you're dead, Commander. What matters is survival." Ilver said nothing, his thoughts heavy with doubt. The humans had turned the tide, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the Coalition had unleashed something they didn't fully understand. The war was far from over, and the true cost of their alliance with humanity had yet to reveal itself. The Coalition's War Council was a tense gathering of voices, each one clamoring for dominance. Holograms of Zorike positions glimmered in the air above the table, casting ghostly shadows over the gathered leaders. The humans stood apart, silent and watchful. Colonel Ethan Hale leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, eyes scanning the display with an intensity that unnerved the room. "Attacking their stronghold head-on is suicide," a Lysaran delegate argued, her crystalline form refracting the dim light. "We should focus on evacuating our remaining forces and regrouping, and see the planet entirely." General Kale's voice was a low growl. "If we lose Zarthus V, we lose the entire sector. There will be no regrouping after that. Ilver's gaze flicked to Hale, who had yet to speak. The Vitraxi commander's voice cut through the rising din. Colonel Hale, you've been silent. Do you have nothing to contribute? Hale pushed off the wall and stepped forward, his boots striking the metal floor with deliberate precision. I've been waiting for you to finish debating whether or not you want to win. The room bristled, alien dignitaries exchanging outraged glances, but Hale ignored them. His gloved hand gestured toward the hologram. This stronghold isn't just their command center. It's the key to their logistics. Fuel depots, communication hubs, barracks, it's all concentrated here. We take it out, and their entire war effort on Zarthis V collapses. That's easier said than done, Ilver said cautiously. The Zorake will defend it with everything they have. They'll expect a conventional assault, Hale replied. We won't give them one. My teams will infiltrate their defenses, plant charges at critical points, and create chaos. While they're scrambling to respond, your forces hit their weakened lines with everything you've got. Hale snorted. You make it sound simple. It is simple, Hale said, his tone sharp. Not easy. Simple. Ilver felt the weight of the room's collective skepticism pressing on him. Yet there was a clarity in Hale's plan that resonated. It was audacious, risky, and entirely unlike the cautious strategies the Coalition typically employed. And perhaps Ilver thought that was precisely why it might work. Very well, Ilver said, his voice firm. We'll follow your lead. But understand this, Colonel. Failure is not an option. Hale's expression didn't waver. It never is. The operation began under the cover of night. Human soldiers moved like shadows, their black armor blending seamlessly with the darkness. Hale led the infiltration team personally, his every movement precise and deliberate. Behind him, a demolitions expert, a sniper, and 2 scouts followed, their roles clear and practiced. The Zorake stronghold loomed ahead, its angular structures glowing with a faint, eerie light. Automated turrets scanned the perimeter, and patrols of biomechanical soldiers marched in perfect unison. Hale's voice crackled softly over the comms. Stay sharp. They won't see us coming, but that doesn't mean they're blind. The team advanced, bypassing the outer defenses with meticulous efficiency. A sniper neutralized sentries with silent, pinpoint accuracy, while the demolitions expert disabled sensors and traps. They slipped inside the stronghold like a blade sliding between ribs. Meanwhile, Ilver and the Coalition forces prepared for the second phase of the assault. The camp buzzed with activity as soldiers loaded weapons, checked armor, and reviewed deployment plans. Ilver moved among them, offering words of encouragement. The aliens still regarded the humans with a mix of admiration and unease, but they could not deny the results they had seen. Hope was a fragile ember, but it burned brighter than it had in months. As Hale's team moved deeper into the stronghold, the tension mounted. Zoray's soldiers patrolled the halls, their monstrous forms casting long shadows under the flickering lights. At one point, the team froze as a patrol passed within inches of their hiding spot, their breathing shallow and controlled. Hale signaled with a quick hand gesture, and the team resumed their advance. They reached the command center first, a cavernous room filled with holographic displays and alien consoles. Zorake officers stood at attention, their alien voices barking commands in a guttural language. Hale observed for a moment, his mind already calculating the fastest way to sow chaos. Plant the charges, he ordered. Then we hit the fuel depot. The team worked swiftly, placing explosives in critical locations. The demolitions expert gave a thumbs up, and Hale activated his comms. Phase 1 complete. Detonating in 3, 2, 1. The explosions rocked the stronghold, ripping through walls and sending debris raining down. Chaos erupted as Zorake's soldiers scrambled to respond. Hale and his team moved with ruthless efficiency, taking out key targets and leaving destruction in their wake. The fuel depot was their final objective, and when it went up in flames, the inferno lit the night sky. Phase 2 is a go, Hale said over the comms. Ilver gave the order, and the Coalition forces surged forward. Brakuri shock troops led the charge, their heavy armor absorbing enemy fire as they broke through weakened defenses. Batraxi sharpshooters provided cover, their precision shots eliminating key targets. Laceran engineers deployed mobile shields, protecting the advancing forces. For the first time, the Zorek faltered. Their disciplined ranks fragmented as the coalition pressed the advantage. The sight of their burning stronghold and the relentless human-led assault shook their resolve. Even their towering dreadwalkers, symbols of their invincibility, fell under the combined might of the united forces. In the midst of the chaos, Hale and his team emerged from the stronghold, their armor scorched but their resolve unbroken. He joined Ilver on the front line, where the Batraxi commander fought alongside his troops. Their eyes met briefly, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. By dawn, the Zorek stronghold was reduced to smoldering ruins. The coalition forces stood victorious, their cheers echoing across the battlefield. Yet as the celebrations began, Ilver's gaze turned to Hale. The human commander stood apart, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the aftermath. For him, there was no elation, only the cold calculus of war. "You did it," Ilver said, approaching him. "The Zorek have been defeated." Hale's eyes didn't leave the ruins. "This isn't over. They'll be back. And when they come, they'll be worse." Ilver frowned. "We'll face them together." Hale turned to him, his voice heavy with warning. "Then you'd better be ready to fight like we do. Because the next time, there won't be room for second chances." As Ilver watched Hale walk away, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's methods, while effective, carried a cost far greater than he had anticipated. The coalition had won a battle, but the war, and the price of their alliance with humanity, was far from over.